right, so we are doing more theorems and postulates related to intersecting lines, but these are all the converses of all the postulates and theorems that we learned related to parallel lines. The converse of the corresponding angles postulate states that if we have pairs of corresponding angles congruent, then the two lines are parallel. So this time we don't know that the lines are parallel, but we do know that we have corresponding angles congruent. So that means the lines are parallel. That's the converse of the corresponding angles postulate. And so these are just basically the opposite of all the parallel line theorems that we learned. So for number 1, it says we're determining whether A is parallel to B. We cannot set these two equal to each other. As if we do, we are saying that these are parallel lines without actually knowing that they're parallel lines. So instead, we're going to use something that does not require our lines to be parallel, and that's these vertical angles. Setting the vertical angles equal to one another, because vertical angles are congruent. Setting this equation equal to 0 because we have a quadratic. Whoops. Using the box method, two numbers when multiplied together equal -30, but when added together equal -1. That's going to be a -6 and a 5. So I have an x minus a 6 times an x plus 5 equal to 0. And if I were to set both of these equal to 0 and solve for x, I would get x is 6 and x is -5. So if I use x as 6, then that would mean that the x plus 35 degree angle would be 41 degrees. And the x squared minus x degree angle would be a 36 minus a 6, so 30 degrees. And in this situation, my alternate exterior angles are not congruent. So in this situation, A and B would not be parallel. But let's look at when x is equal to -5. When x is equal to -5, a -5 plus a 35 gives me 30 degrees. A -5 squared is a 25, minus a -5 also gives me 30 degrees. So in this situation, my alternate exterior angles are congruent. So the lines would be parallel, but only when x is equal to -5. So line A is parallel to line B only when x is equal to -5 by the converse of the alternate exterior angles theorem. All right, looking at number 2, we want to determine which lines, if any, are parallel. Now remember, I can't use anything related to parallel lines. I can only use facts that are not related to parallel lines. So I can use the linear pair theorem. That has nothing to do with whether the lines are parallel or not. So if I add these up, and set them equal to 180, I can solve for x. Combining like terms, I get a 9x minus a 27 is equal to 180. Adding this 27 over, I get a 9x is equal to a 207. And dividing the 9 over, I get x to come out to be 23. Putting 23 in for x into all of these angles here, a 4 times a 23 plus a 25 gives me that this angle here is 117 degrees. A 6 times a 23 minus a 5 gives me that this angle is 133 degrees. A 3 times a 23 minus 22 gives me that this angle is 47 degrees. And a 2 times a 23 plus a 1 gives me that this angle is 47 degrees. Well, if lines C and D were parallel, cut by this transversal, this angle and this angle would be congruent because they're alternate alternate interior angles. And since they're not congruent, that would mean that C and D, lines C and D, would not be parallel. If I look at lines A and B cut by this transversal, these 47 degree angles are alternate exterior angles, and since they are congruent, that proves that lines A and B are parallel by the converse of the alternate exterior angles theorem. Those are the only sets of lines that I can say are parallel to each other for this one. All right, so number 3 says we're going to find the value of x, so that L is parallel to M. So for this one, we actually would set our two same side interior angles equal to 180. Because we want to find the value of x that makes these two lines parallel. And so that would be making those two lines parallel. So adding them up, let me rewrite that. All right. So combining like terms, adding this 15 over, and dividing by 13, x would need to be 15 in order to make these lines parallel. It did say to justify your answer with a reason, and that is our reasoning. All right, that's it for the first level 4 video.